Well, hello everyone, and we have a very special guest today who needs no introduction, but I'm going to give him one anyway because he's worth it. He is Sunderland's post-war record goal scorer, and actually at a time when we're reflecting and looking back, we're looking back specifically, I guess, today on a season 20 years ago, which was, in my time supporting Sunderland, the very best it's been, and probably for a lot of you watching as well. Kevin Phillips is here. How are you, Kevin?
Yeah, I'm good, Dave. Thank you.
I love the room for a starter, Kev. You can see all the memorabilia in there. And I'm pleased to see that Sunderland is dominating as well on the shirts and the pictures.
Well, I didn't think it would be right if I didn't have anything in the background. There is other stuff. We're connected to my other clubs, but of course, the room's dominated more of my time at Sunderland. So really looking forward to having a chat with you today.
I want to take you right back, Kevin, and a few people will know this story and a lot of people won't. You know, how it came to be that this guy who was playing at Watford and in truth wasn't scoring 20, 30 goals a season suddenly became this huge goal-scoring hero at Sunderland. So take us back to Watford and in your view, how it happened that you actually managed to make that move to Sunderland in the first place.
No, you're right. It all came about really because I spent 2.5 seasons at Watford. I scored a fair few goals, but not prolifically as I did when I first went to Sunderland. And I was literally coming to the end of my contract, and Graham Taylor was in charge at the time, and we couldn't agree a contract. I thought I was worth a little bit more than what they were offering, so we decided to look elsewhere. And funny enough, we made the trip to Ipswich. I'd agreed personal terms with Ipswich. We actually made the journey up there, me and my agent. We spoke to David Sheepshanks at the time. But we couldn't, Watford and Ipswich couldn't agree a fee. So it would have had to go to a tribunal. And at the time, Ipswich had already had a player going to a tribunal. And what I could gather, you couldn't have two at the same time. I'd have had to wait for that one to come to a conclusion. So I wasn't prepared to wait. So we were a bit of a crossroads, really. Me and my agent stuck in Portman Road's car park. I didn't want to go back to Watford. Obviously, Ipswich, I would have had to wait. So I was like, what do we do? And he said, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. He says, I do know that Peter Reid, the Sunderland manager, is really keen. He really likes you. Apparently, I made an impression up at Roker Park the previous season. So he said, I'll give him a call. I said, yeah, we'll give him a call. You know, it doesn't hurt. Anyway, I said, just don't make out that I'm in the car. And believe it or not, we had car phones back that long time ago, Dave. So it got Peter on the phone. As soon as he mentioned my name, Peter was straight away, before he finished the sentence, said, get him up here. He says, I'll sign him tomorrow. So literally, it was one of those. I went back, spoke to my wife. We were due our first child at the time. And I just said, what do you think? And she said, let's go for it. So I literally jumped in my car the next day, drove all the way and signed that day. And I'd have to say it was probably the best decision that I ever made.
I didn't know you'd actually played at Roker Park as well
yeah.
In that story. What are your memories of that?
Yeah, it was quite daunting, really, because being a young Southern lad, I hadn't really gone as far north as Sunderland. You know, I'd always played, until obviously I was a professional, I'd always just played in the Southern area, the Southern leagues. And so it was a bit of a culture shock coming up, you know, driving along Wessington Way. You know, obviously the stadium light wasn't there then, and then going into, Roker Park, the houses. It reminded me of Coronation Street, all around that area. So it was a bit, but it was. I always remember the atmosphere was amazing. So passionate, and I didn't think I played particularly well, but Peter Reid said that I caused them a lot of problems. Although I didn't score, I was like a thorn in their side. So I'd obviously done enough to convince Peter to sign us.
So first impressions then of joining that squad at that time?
Yeah, I was really excited. If I'm being honest, I didn't know an awful lot about a lot of the players. Of course, I'd heard of a few, Lee Clark there at the time and Big Niall Quinn and obviously the manager. So apart from that, not many of the other players. So it was really just getting to know the players, doing a bit of research, speaking to people that do know them. Alec Chamberlain, who I was at Watford with, had a chat with him. Glenn Roeder about the North East, who was my manager at Watford. So really just talking to people, find out what it's like, the area, in terms of the players, Alec Chamberlain was really helpful at that time. But it was, Peter Reid made me feel really welcome, and so did the squad. The first training session, none of them had really heard of me, so it was really me getting to know them getting to know me, and it didn't take long for either of us to settle in.
We were speaking to Mickey Gray a couple of days ago, Kevin, and talking about the impression that you made when you went there in your first training sessions, and he said what struck him about you was the self-confidence that you had straight away, and you almost sort of said to the other players, in Mickey's words, if you don't know what I'm about, just watch this in training sessions. And soon it became very apparent that kind of goal-scoring talent that you had.
Yeah, no, I think the thing for me, Dave, is that there was no pressure on me going to the football club. From what I could read and what I was told, they were crying out for a goal scorer. They wanted a big name to go there and fire them back to the Premier League. So obviously when I signed, it came in under the radar. No one had really heard of me. So I think that helped me. There was no pressure, but I believed in my own ability. It wasn't being big-headed. It was just like any good striker. You've got to have that confidence. You've got to have that selfishness to believe that give him an opportunity and you'll score a goal. And, the great thing about me when I first went there is the lads created opportunities for me. And I always, but as I say, I always believed in my own ability. And, if you couple that with a side that are creating chances, then, you'd like to think you're onto a winner. And I certainly was in those first 3-4 seasons.
Do you remember your debut?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, of course, I remember it very well. I think the biggest thing for me was I'd forgotten that I'd got sent off in my second from last game for Watford. So I was actually suspended for Sunderland's first game away at Sheffield United.
That's right. I remember that now you say it, yeah.
Yeah. So, I'd heard a lot about don't get on the wrong side of Peter Reid and don't annoy him because it can backfire. And I only realised that I wasn't eligible to play until the Monday before the game on the Saturday. And it just came to me, and I just rang the agent, and he said, "You haven't told him yet." I said, "I forgot all about it." And on the Monday morning, I didn't realise till after training, we'd done some team preparation for the game Saturday with me in the side. So that was the most nervous I'd ever had to be, to go and knock on Reedy's door and say, "You do realise that I'm suspended Saturday?" And to be fair, he didn't go mad at me. He was disappointed. He was more disappointed with the powers that be that hadn't informed him. But obviously, I went to the game. But my debut was against Manchester City. I remember it very well. I think we won the game 2 or 3-1, and I managed to get on the score sheet that night. And as any striker will tell you, to get off the mark in your first game was a massive relief. That monkey off your back in front of, I think it was 40,000 people. It was an incredible evening, and I'll always remember that, of course.
Well, I was there as well. I mean, it's one thing signing for a club that played at Roker Park, and it's another signing for one that was playing at the Stadium of Light. Was that a factor in your decision-making at the time?
I didn't know, Dave. Honestly, I did not know that Sunderland were moving into a new stadium. It was my agent that had to say to me that this club's just come out of the Premier League. They're building a magnificent new stadium. It'll be ready for the start of next season. And when I did drive up to sign, as I said, when I came up for the Roker Park game, there was nothing on where the stadium was now. But the next time I came up to sign, I remember driving along that same road, Wessington Way, and all of a sudden this stadium came out of nowhere. And as soon as I seen it, I'm not exaggerating, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up, because I thought, I'm going to be playing in that next season. As much as Vicarage Road is a lovely little stadium, it's not in comparison to what the stadium was like. So I couldn't wait to get started and to play in that stadium in front of a full house, as you well know, when they're flying, it's an amazing place to play.
All told then, you scored 35 goals, I think I'm right in saying, in that first season, which is a post-war record. And of course that took Sunderland all the way to that much talked about playoff final. When you're part of that side, and you talked about those players that were able to create chances for you, were there particular players that you enjoyed playing with, that you felt on a wavelength with?
Yeah, definitely. I think more, of course, Niall, stands out. But I think the biggest one for me and Niall was the wide players and the midfield boys and the fullbacks. More so Mickey Gray overlapping Alan Johnson, who was cutting inside. So I think one of the biggest players for me was Nicky Summerby. Nicky for me was one of the best crossers. I was fortunate enough to have a spell in the England squad and played with arguably probably the world's best crosser ball in David Beckham. And I always compare Nicky to David in terms of their quality of balls. You make the run, he'll find you. And Nicky had the art of, he wasn't blessed with pace, but what he did, the quality he had was he didn't need to take a fullback on to put a cross in. Now, you know football very well. You understand what I'm saying. He was able to shift the ball out to his right foot and whip a ball in behind the centre half. And I knew it was coming. So it was one of those, if I make the run, Nicky will find me. Alan Johnson, a little bit different. He would like to drive inside and play a little 1-2. He would slide balls down the side. Mickey Gray would overlap, a little reverse pass for Mickey to put a cross in. So, the relationship that I built with with Mickey Gray and the two wide boys was instrumental that season. And of course, Big Niall getting on the end of his knockdowns.
How did that partnership develop with you and Niall?
I think it just happened. I think it was, when I first went to the club, all Sunderland supporters will know that Niall was pretty much looking to retire, with his knee. He couldn't get over his knee injury. He was frustrated. I think he was thinking about calling time. And, I think he just went, right, I'll give it one last shot. I think he saw, he was quite excited at what he's seen in training and the early pre-season matches in terms of myself. I think he felt that we could probably strike up a good partnership. And, I think it was the last chance saloon for him. He got himself over his knee injury. Whether it was 100%, I don't know. But, he just limited what he did. He's very clever in that. And it was one of those which it really just threw us together. And people always say, I bet you worked on it 24/7 on the training ground. Well, we didn't. It was one of those, really said, all he ever said to me and Quinny said was, just don't ever be 10 yards further away from Niall. Now, whether that's in behind making a run or whether that's dropping round in front of him for a knockdown and then you play someone in. So that's all I ever kept in my mind. We never worked on anything on the training ground. It was one of those that was chucked together and we just understood each other.
But if you're thinking, for example, a ball from the back, and that Sunderland team wasn't shy of doing that, either from goalkeeper or from the fullback sometimes, if they weren't going past the halfway line. Would you be looking at getting beyond Niall? Would you be thinking, I know he's going to flick it on? Or would you be looking to get around his feet? Because he also had the ability to use his chest really well or to lay it off with either foot.
I think what you do is you judge wherever it's coming from, whether it's coming from the goalkeeper or the fullback, you kind of judge the flight of the ball, whether that there's no way Niall's going to be able to bring that down on his chest. Of course, you can see straight away whether it's going to his feet or not. So if it was going to his head, I would invariably make a run round him, make a run off him. And Niall had the great ability to be able to hang in the air, have a look where I make my run, and then find me. Not every time. He wasn't superhuman, and he come up against some good centre halves that wouldn't let him do that. But majority of the time, he had that quality to hang in the air and find me. Now, if I could read the flight of the ball that was coming to his chest, then there's no point me running in behind unless, I pull away for him to set someone, then I run in behind. That's a different thing. But, I would just be clever. If it's going to his chest, can I come round the front of him? And also it depends on the area of the pitch. If Niall's backing in on the edge of the box, of course, there's no room to run in behind. So what I would look to do to come in around him for him to drop one for me that I could get the shot off or play it wide and then get in the box. So it just depended really on the flight of the ball into them.
It was a brilliant first season you had, and the problem was, I suppose, that there were 2 or 3 outstanding sides in the Championship that season, and it meant a playoff final, and we all know what happened. But I was reminded the other day, again by Mickey Gray, that you weren't around for the penalty shootout. Give me the playoff final through your eyes.
Mixed emotions, really, for me. You're right. I had to come off in the 65th minute, I think, through cramp, which really annoyed me and disappointed me. Probably a bit of a mixture of things in the playoff games against Sheffield United. We had the game down there, then obviously the game at the Stadium night where I managed to score the winning goal. But I took a knock on my thigh in that game, and I got a dead leg, and I wasn't able to train. This was on the Tuesday night, and I think we had to wait 10 days for the final. So I wasn't able to train for probably a week because I wanted to be spot on for the game. And so I didn't do a lot of training. In that meantime, Reedy had taken us away for one of his famous team bonding weekends, which I probably shouldn't have participated, but it was a couple of days just, as you know, probably on the drink, overindulging, and then it was back to work. But because I didn't train and I'd had those 2 days, my preparation wasn't ideal. And on a big pitch at Wembley on a hot day, you know, I just felt I had cramps. It's the only time I'd ever had cramps. So I was gutted not to have been a part of the penalties, because I certainly would have took one, whether it would have been the first one or it would have been the last one. I certainly would have been involved. So for me, mixed emotions, disappointment, really.
Next season, no problem. Barnstorming year, 100-odd points, 23 goals in 26 games for you, and a few injuries as well along the way. But were you at that point thinking this is a Premier League side in all but name?
Yeah, I think it was building. I think in hindsight, it done us the world of good not getting promoted via the playoffs. I think it was probably a bit too soon. And a lot of people would say, you know, why would you say that? You want to get to the Premier League at any time. Of course you do. But I just felt another season with that squad together, we add to it, you know, we get to know each other, we can get promotion. And as you rightly said, you know, we romped the league. You know, again, I scored a lot more goals. I would have got a lot more if I hadn't got injured. But you know, when we did get promoted, again, you know, the bulk of the squad, if we could have added a little bit of quality just to enhance it, I felt, you know, we could certainly stay in the Premier League. I never envisaged that we could finish where we did, but certainly, yeah, during that season, the team spirit for me was one of the biggest things. You know, for me, that's huge in the promotions I've had. You get a good team spirit coupled with the quality, then you've always got a chance, and that's certainly what we had.
So then we're into 99-2000, and I've talked about this right at the start of being the great season for me in terms of my supporting time at Sunderland, and also the season that followed as well, 2 7th-place finishes. But the start we made, we as fans could never really have predicted. Yes, the team had momentum, and you hoped that 100-odd points would translate to Premier League form as well. But to be second after 10 games, Kevin, I mean, did the players expect that?
No, of course not. I think we probably, after the first game of the season, the way at Chelsea when we got thumped, we would have took second from bottom at that stage, just to not be rooted at the bottom. But I just think you're right. Momentum was carried over the 2 seasons. You know, we were building momentum. We were getting to know each other. And of course, you know, me and Nyla struck up a partnership that I think a lot of Premier League teams, a lot of Premier League defenders haven't come up against, that little large combination, you know, 2 strikers, although that was more common back then to what it is now. But we just had a way of winning football matches, and, you know, we had some good players in our side, you know, some really good players. And I think the team spirit was one of the biggest things. You know, it was just, you're right, momentum. So, yeah, you're right, to nearly be top of the Premier League after 10 games we had to keep pinching ourselves. It was, it was quite surreal at the time.
And in terms of your journey, yes, there was the Chelsea bump at the start of the season, but then it was Watford midweek, first home game, and your first goals as well. Was that important for you, do you think, to sort of feel that you could, the confirmation, if you like, that you could score goals in the Premier League?
Yeah, it was huge. Again, you know, it wasn't my first goal for Sunderland, but again, it's another challenge, you know, to step up from the Premier League. The journey I'd had from non-league, you know, to the Premier League was quite quick, really. It was only 4 and a bit years. So, you know, of course, we do it now when teams come up from the Championship. You know, people will say, well, you know, it's easier to score in that league than it is in the Premier League, which I agree. You know, but I was always of the, and I still am. The goals are always still the same size. The ball's the same size. It's just whether you can be in a side that can create you opportunities to get those chances. Well, unfortunately, the Premier League with the quality, you're not going to get as many opportunities. So, you know, I think one of the biggest things for me as well was having people saying that I won't score goals in the Premier League. So it was another challenge for me to try and prove people wrong, which I'd had to do all my career, really. So, you know, one in particular was Rodney Marsh, who probably, you know, come out and said at the time he didn't think I'd score more than 5 goals in the Premier League. So that, no one's really got on my nerves in my career, or really, you know, wrangled me. But that one comment really did, and I was desperate to prove him wrong. And you know, thankfully, I was able to do that.
Well, 19 goals in the first 18 games. I think that sort of put that argument to bed a little bit. I mean, I wanted to ask you about any particular games that stand out. For me, I suppose, as a fan, the Chelsea home game, having lost there, and then to thump them at the Stadium of Light was really quite special. What about for you?
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't disagree with you. I think, of course, the Watford game, getting off the mark and getting the 2 goals straight away, just to take away any doubt that could I score in that league. So that was a big one for me. The Newcastle game at St James's, when I moved to the North East, of course, we were still in the old First Division then, but it was amazing. I didn't really know that Newcastle Sunderland was a derby. I'm making myself out to sound quite stupid, but I didn't realise it was as big as derby as what it was, and people were already talking. We're still in the Championship. They're already talking. Can't wait to play the Mags when we get to the Premier. And I think, well, let's get into the Premier League first. So, I started to realise as time grew how big that game was, and obviously when it came round, I was desperate to do well, because I didn't actually think, Dave, that after the first 2 seasons and scoring 60 goals nearly, that I'd actually been taken to the Sunderland faithful's heart just yet, until you score that winning goal in the derby. And after that night, I think my affection with the fans went to a different level after you score that winning goal. So of course that game sticks in my mind massively. And of course the Chelsea game at home, I would have to say that the first half of football in that game was probably the best football, first 45 minutes of any game that I've played in my whole career. It was just amazing. Everything we touched come off, everything me and Niall touched, we scored. It was just an incredible game of football.
It's the iconic celebration as well, Kev, isn't it? The knee slide in at the Stadium of Light, when that one went in from, 30 yards?
Yeah, and I think the weather as well. I don't know if you recall the weather. It was absolutely hammering it down. Reedy, whenever I see Reedy now, and we talk about it when we do sportsman's dinners at it, I didn't know at the time, but Reedy said their staff were trying to get the game called off because the ball was sticking, because they didn't want to lose the match. They're 2-1 down. And I believe if we'd have played for another 10 minutes, I think the ref probably would have called it off. So, of course, I'm delighted that he didn't. And, it was some people say it was a cross. Believe me, it wasn't a cross, because there's no way I was crossing it for Quinny when I get in those situations. And that's the selfishness coming out of me. So it was an incredible night.
So if we fast forward that season, missing out on the top 6 on goal difference to Aston Villa after a disappointing run after Christmas. I don't want to put sort of sourness onto that season, because it was amazing from where we'd come. But once you got into that position, did it feel like a bit of a step backwards?
Yeah, I think we were gutted. Coming in the season, not to finish 6th and get into, I think it was a European spot at that time, was, once we'd secured Premier League safety, then you start thinking, this is achievable. Can we finish in a European spot? And, to have had the season that we'd had, we didn't want to just rest on our laurels. We didn't want to just accept staying in the league once we got past that 40-point mark. We were really disappointed. But again, the squad we've had, we'd overcome disappointment before. We were of the belief that if we make another couple of real quality signings in the summer, we'll have another opportunity next season. And again, we came very close again. But I think that first season, we were, certainly myself, it would have been incredible to cap the season that I'd had, playing from a country, the 2 golden boots, then to have, the chance to play in Europe would have just capped an incredible season.
I think I'm right in saying, and I'm sure you'll know this, Kevin, that you still are the only English player to have won the European Golden Boot. Is that right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It stood out. It wasn't, I think it was only 2 seasons ago that I was still the only Englishman to have won the Premier League Golden Boot, and Harry Kane managed to overtake me there. So that stood for, I think, 17 or 18 years. And then, of course, the European Golden Shoe is what they call it, which I think is a bit bizarre. But, I'm the only English one. I know Ali McCoyster's won 2, playing for Rangers. I'm very, very proud to still have that honour. And, when you think it might be okay for a while, whilst you've still got Ronaldo and Messi playing, scoring 40-odd goals every season, I'm very proud to have that achievement.
So when you got that, is it in that room, by the way, or is it somewhere else in the house?
No, it's in the other room.
When you got that, was there a special ceremony that you had to go to?
No, well, I got invited to a dinner over in Switzerland, I think it was, but we were actually playing on the evening. We had a midweek match, so they sent someone I don't know whether it was someone from FIFA or it was just someone that was sponsored through Adidas, because the boot was through Adidas. But they presented me with it on the pitch before the game that night. So I never got to go to the lavish dinner, which would have been, magnificent. So, for me at the end of the day, it wasn't about the presentation. It's about having the boot sitting in the other room. And I quite often take it up to the Sunderland Fans Museum, who I know Michael owns it very well. And they have it for a month every now and then so that people can see it. So I'm always delighted to do that.
Brilliant. And the next season, you walked out the Stadium of Light to a much bigger Stadium of Light, a record crowd of over 46,000 for Arsenal. Was the expectation then about matching that season or trying to maintain that level or trying to go even better?
Yeah, I think Reedy is very good at, in terms of, his man management skills, not getting carried away with ourselves. Some of the players, you dare to dream, can we go that one step further? I think the thing was, first and foremost, let's survive. Secondly, can we go one step further than last year? Now, can we finish one place higher than last year? There's no reason why we can't. We've shown that. But that means that everyone has to perform again to the qualities week in and week out, what they did, the previous season. So, we're playing in front of a bigger crowd, so the expectation was a little bit bigger. I think, of course, everyone knew about me and Niall, that partnership, so we had to try and come up with ways of overcoming that. Everyone knew about us back to front, times very quickly, and quite often, that would be the first ball, so they had to deal with that. Yeah, but I think the biggest thing was to try and finish that one step higher, and we came so close again. When that season finished, I think we were both very, very satisfied of the two seasons we just had in the Premier League.
And of course, those England caps as well, Kev, that you mentioned. Going back to what you said about your self-belief, when you stepped into that environment and training with the very best players in the country, did you feel a part of it? And do you have any regrets that maybe you don't have more than the 8 caps?
Yeah, I think at the beginning, it was very, it's very cliquey back in them days. I'm not going to shy away from it. And we've heard other players in that era say, there was a lot of cliques within the England squad. You had your groups from your Uniteds, your Liverpools, your Arsenals. And they pretty much tended to keep themselves to themselves. Whereas nowadays, Gareth's trying to build everyone, mixes. Doesn't matter what team you come from, we're all in it together. So, there was only myself and Mickey Gray, when we first went. So it was tough. Didn't really know anyone. So we didn't really feel a part of it. I didn't anyway to start off. But I would have to say Kevin Keegan was excellent in trying to, integrate me into the squad. But it was tough. You're competing with, in my time, I can give you 2 answers with the same question that you said about the caps. Of course, I think I probably deserve more than 8 caps, but I'm not bitter about it, Dave, because I think of the players that I was competing against in that era. If I was playing now, I'd probably have 20, 30 caps, but then you had Alan Shearer and Michael Owen, Robbie Fowler, Teddy Sheringham, Emil Heskey, Matt Letizia, Chris Sutton, Andy Cole. There was loads. There might be a couple I've missed. Les Ferdinand was still around at that time. I feel privileged to have got 8 caps. I got a chance to go to. I think the biggest thing that probably annoys me is that I didn't get any time on the pitch in Euro 2000 when we got knocked out in the Euro in the group stages. And I just come off of the 99-2000 season, winning 2 golden boots. Not to get a minute on the pitch. That's the only thing that disappoints me.
Yeah, I'm not surprised really. Do you think there was a feeling at all that you were someone who would play well with a big guy, and if that wasn't there, that you weren't going to be able to be the same striker? Possibly.
I didn't feel that Kevin, in all the conversations I had with him, I never got that impression. He tried me up front with Alan 2 or 3 times, and it just didn't quite work. Whatever that reason was, whether there was a little bit of rivalry between me and him because of who we played for. Some people might suggest that. I didn't. There was times where I felt he probably could have passed to me and didn't. But listen, I'm not going to... That happens in football. There were times when I should have passed to Niall and I didn't because I was being selfish. and that's and that's what top quality strikers are. So it was just one of those. I think I was just very unfortunate that I was competing with the likes of the strikers I was with, and they're scoring goals for your Liverpools and your Arsenals and your Manchester United. And unfortunately, no disrespect to Sunderland, I'm scoring my goals for Sunderland, and that's probably the difference.
A couple more for you. You've mentioned a few times about your relationship with Peter Reid. So what for you was special about him as a manager, and special for you?
I think it's just his management skills, Dave. He's, tactically, yes, he knows the game inside out, but it was more Bobby Saxton used to do a lot of the training. Bobby was superb in his time at Sunderland and when I was there. But Reid, he just had a knack of, you wanted to play for Peter Reid, and that's half your battle. Having been in coaching now and played for a long time, if you've got players that want to play for you, then that's half your battle over. Then it's just trying to get the qualities out, get the system or whatever it is. But everyone enjoyed coming into training. He'd give you a lot of leeway, but then he'd also come down on hard if you overstep the mark. But he had a knack of just pulling you to one side and just saying the odd thing in your ear and just make you feel, like you're 6 foot tall. And his qualities were, for me, man management were second to none at that time.
And finally, Kevin, I sort of know, from speaking to fans of other clubs and from working around the game, it's not just at Sunderland that you're held with great affection. It's pretty much all the clubs you've been at, barring maybe one or two where you haven't had such a great goal-scoring run, perhaps. But even until the back end of your career, you've had an impact wherever you've been. But what would you say is special about your relationship with Sunderland fans?
I think probably my upbringing and the route that I took into football through the non-league, and it's, as you well know, the area is not a privileged area. They work hard for their money. It's a working class. They haven't got the lifestyle that you would have down south or in London, and for them to be so passionate about their football club. Even now when I go back there is quite remarkable. I've just watched the new series of the Sunderland Till I Die, and you can still see the passion, the love that they have for their football club through the highs and the lows, but they always turn up. And that for me just shows class from supporters. There's every other club has the same supporters, but I think, of course, scoring the amount of goals that I did helps. Scoring the winner in the North East Derby again, helps. But it's just a place that just oozes passion, and I love that. And as covering football for a long time, passion in football is tremendous, and I love being part of it.
And how does it make you feel when you do go back, which I know you do from time to time, and they're still singing your name?
Yeah, well, I had an incident this season, actually. It was only probably about 2 months ago that I went back, got invited to a box, and I was there for about 10 minutes, and they recognised us. So I got up, the people in the box, I didn't really want to get out, so I felt a little bit embarrassed because Phil was going for a tough time at the time, and the crowd was singing my name, and I thought, I don't want you singing my name, actually. I said, no, I want you to sing for your team because they're struggling. But so I stood up and started videoing them, and I must say, after about a minute, the whole stadium was singing Super Kev while the game was going on, and I actually captured it for about 45 seconds, a minute on the video, and it made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. And that's, 20 years after I left the football club, or not far off it. So, yeah, I love going back, but I'm desperate like you are for them to get out of that League One, get into the Championship, and start rebuilding.
Well said, mate. It's been really good to talk to you. Thank you so much for giving up your time, and I mean it. I know it will mean an awful lot to a lot of people to hear from you at this tricky time as well. Thanks so much, Kevin.
Cheers, Dave. Pleasure.